When we consider action steps and solutions for Martin and Mrs. Arthurs in this fourth grade situation, one of the first things we think about is pulling everybody together and actually collaborating. That one's kind of a no-brainer, and that's kind of an easy answer. But we need to dig a little bit deeper because it doesn't just work to sit in the room together. We have to make sure we have some focus. And as a special education person and probably the case manager, you might be walking into a room of people that are expecting you to lead and have answers. So where do we get those answers? Well, it's in all of the material that we've reviewed and I've provided for this week. We need to take a look deeply at our high leverage practices. It is mostly the red column, the collaboration, which specifically calls and asks for all teachers to collaborate with professionals to increase student success. That's the first pillar of an HLP. It also calls for us to collaborate with families to support student learning and secure needed services. In Martin's case, we likely need to communicate, organize, and kind of go back to the drawing board and make sure that everyone is working together. One of the embedded specific skills for high leverage practices is number 2, being able to organize and facilitate effective meetings with professionals and families. That's what's really needed in this case. So that's kind of a way to dig deep into these frameworks that we've been provided to solve for specific student issues. One of the most common ways that we work together as special education and general education staff and teachers is co-teaching. A lot of those models that I provided visuals for that are probably a review for a lot of you would be wonderful in this case. If we could get maybe that special ed teacher back into that classroom to co-teach at least once a week. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but to be more aware of everything that's going on in this case. We don't want to always lean on those special education teachers and staff, but in this case, it's a possibility. Maybe there's a way to make it work. But co-teaching is probably the most common way that special education teachers and general education teachers work together and collaborate. And due to some changes, that's not happening in Martin and Mrs. Arthur's case any longer. We really also can look at our text. We need to know that even though I brought co-teaching forward as a possible solution, it's not always the only solution. Putting students out in general education classrooms to honor their least restrictive environment doesn't always have to happen with an adult paired with them, a co-teacher or a para in that classroom. Chapter 6 identifies not only the HLPs, but other instructional approaches that can work. For example, explicit instruction, universal design for learning, and systematic instruction that can happen in the general education classroom that benefit all students. We can also use technology. A tool like Google Classroom can accommodate, modify, support, and allow for collaborative things to happen without teachers having to spend time in each other's classrooms, just as an idea. But also utilizing some peer supports. Would Martin, could we fill in some needed support time for Martin appropriately with peers? There are some very structured ways to do that, not just giving him a buddy in the classroom. That's not what I'm talking about, but just as a possible solution. First and foremost in this case, we need to really access HLP, I think it's number 2, and have the special education teacher or the case manager step up, organize and facilitate a meeting in order to make sure everyone is collaborating to put the ideas on the table and decide what's best in this case.